XPeng. Actually, it's pronounced Xiaopeng. In this video, I'll probably call them XPeng, kind of a hybrid of the two, because I butcher languages, including the English language. They're the next EV manufacturer from China in my series. Like one of their chief competitors, NIO, they're an EV startup listed on the New York Stock Exchange. They are technologically advanced, but not yet profitable. In this video, I'll go through some of their backstory, kind of walk through their lineup and see how they compete with some of its major competitors, and then I'll end it talking about their operations and financials since they're a publicly traded company. And just a bit of a preview for that section, if you're an investor in XPeng, I would say either they need to sell or you need to sell. I'll tell you what I mean. XPeng is an electric vehicle startup founded in 2014, so they're the same age as NIO. Headquartered in Guangzhou, China, it also has an autonomous driving research office in Mountain View, California. The company derives its name from He Xiaopeng, one of the early backers and current chairman of the company. Between 2014 and 2018, they attracted investments from Alibaba, Foxconn, and some prominent Chinese entrepreneurs. More recently, it received investments from venture capitalists like Sequoia Capital China and the Sovereign Wealth Fund of oil-rich Qatar and Abu Dhabi. In August 2020, it started trading on the New York Stock Exchange, and it's also listed on the Hong Kong Exchange. On its first day in New York, it closed about $23 and regularly traded over $40 until the past year, when higher interest rates, fierce competition in China, and disappointing deliveries sent the stock below $10. Later, I'll go through some of the reasons that investors are nervous about the future of XPeng, but first let's look at their lineup of vehicles. It's a reason to be excited for their future or nervous if you're a competitor. Here's a decoder for their lineup. Electric vehicles that start with a P are their sedans. Models that start with a G are crossover SUVs, either with a traditional upright rear glass or with a sportback sloped rear. The higher the number, the larger the vehicle. Unlike Tesla and NIO, XPeng did not start off with a sports car or a hypercar. Its first model was the G3, which made its debut in an obscure corner of the Consumer Electronics Show in 2018. At that time, they said G3 stood for Geek 3. Hey, that's a great name for a YouTube channel. But then what does P stand for? I'm not going to speculate. It's just going to get me in trouble. The current G3 available is the G3i. I means it has gone through a mid-cycle facelift that happened midway through 2021. The early G3 had different front-end styling, whereas the new G3i has the robot face design language used across the rest of their lineup. The G3 was the early sales leader for XPeng because it was their first model and its smallest, but sales have cooled off, which tells you something about the dynamics of the EV market in China. If you're a premium EV maker in China, going into smaller classes of vehicles does not easily result in increased volumes. The product and price competition in these smaller segments are fierce. The G3 is smaller than the Tesla Model Y. A better comparison is the BYD Wan Plus, which is less expensive than the XPeng G3i in China and offers similar specs and features. The XPeng G3i does have a self-parking feature to set it apart from less premium EVs. Interesting feature you will see on the G3 before the refresh is that pod on the roof. It looks like a tiny roof box cargo box for cat toys or something, but inside is a high-definition camera. It is not needed for the self-parking feature. That does fine with other cameras. I suspect when they first showed the vehicle in 2018, they planned to achieve fully autonomous driving someday soon, and that camera would be key to achieving that. But it never happened. The camera just became a gimmick. You can pan around the vehicle, and when the G3 got its refresh, the pod disappeared. Moving upmarket and away from the mass of Chinese EV competition, we have the XPeng P7, their second all-electric vehicle. It competes against the Tesla Model 3, but size-wise, it's closer to the Model S. Compared to the Neo, the P7 is smaller than their ET7 and less expensive because it offers a base rear-wheel drive model, while Neo doesn't. It's only all-wheel drive. Neo is focused on the premium EV buyer. Check my video out on them, or better yet, hit the subscribe button so it shows up in your feed. Specs and images I'm showing are for the refreshed P7i. The P7i is built on SEPA, their smart electric platform architecture. Engineers in America love to name things with acronyms, and engineers in China love them too. The P7i gets an upgraded version of their driver assistance system called XPILOT. I'll talk about that more later. For the system, the vehicle adds 2 LiDAR sensors nicely integrated into the headlights, similar to what Kia did for the EV9. Other automakers like NIO and Volvo are placing 1 LiDAR sensor at the top of the windshield in a bubble that gives it a very good field of view for automated driving. XPeng does offer something unique that NIO and Tesla don't have: scissor doors. It's a limited P7 Wing Edition. Naming for the different P7 models includes the range number in kilometers on the China CLTC test, plus the name. So you'll see names like this when you dig into the lineup. Just know that the China CLTC test is very generous with its miles. Compared to testing in Europe or the EPA tests in the United States, those numbers are more accurate and lower than what you see coming out of China. Overall, the XPeng P7i looks good and has solid specs, and it's XPeng's best-selling model. I mentioned that the P7 is sized in between the Tesla sedans, while the XPeng P5 is Model 3 sized, also similar in size to the NIO ET5. XPeng started off the new year by slashing prices on their vehicles, including the P5. It's now cheaper than the Tesla Model 3 rear-wheel drive and way cheaper than the NIO ET5, which has standard all-wheel drive. It offers 3 different batteries. The standard battery is LFP, that stands for lithium iron phosphate, a chemistry which is popular in China for its affordability, and it's starting to catch on in the rest of the world. It does offer higher levels of XPILOT advanced driver assistance. It does not currently offer all-wheel drive, and charging is not as fast as its competitors. I'll go over sales delivery numbers later, but the XPeng P5 and the G3i may be examples of why XPeng is struggling for sales. Their EVs can compete on price at the base model, and they offer driver assistance systems, but they lack in some areas like fast charging, all-wheel drive performance, and crossover functionality. They have addressed some of these concerns with their 2 latest models. XPeng introduced the G9 in late 2022 on the same EV platform as the refreshed P7i sedan. This EV has a new 800-volt architecture featuring silicon carbide chips for faster charging from its network of 480 kilowatt chargers. In 5 minutes, they claim you can add 124 miles of range. That's fast, but it's unlikely the car can sustain that rate for more than a few minutes. EVs charge on a curve to prevent heat buildup in the batteries, and you need to charge at one of their latest chargers to get that speed. But still, it's impressive. It comes with standard rear-wheel drive, making it more affordable than its NIO competitor. The Tesla Model X is also a competitor, but it gets imported into China from the US, so it's not price competitive after adding taxes and tariffs. It offers their latest XPILOT system. The exterior is clean and attractive. The interior is beautiful, with a large center display and an equally large passenger display. Passenger displays like this have a filter that limits the viewing angle, so the driver cannot be distracted by whatever the front passenger is watching. XPeng engineers love acronyms, so they named their electrical architecture and software operating system that can perform over-the-air updates to add new features in the future and to improve quality. But all this good stuff is not entirely their latest and greatest, as XPeng unveiled the G6 at the Shanghai Motor Show in April 2023, and yes, it's their version of the Tesla Model Y. I know that sounds demeaning to XPeng, but the Model Y has recently taken over as the best selling car in the world. It's just the right size for many markets, so why not replicate it? The vehicle is based on their all new SEPA 2.0 platform, with even a better version of their electrical architecture and software platform. It too is an 800-volt architecture with silicon carbide chips for excellent performance. I said XPeng went after Tesla with this EV. The G6 features front and rear casting assemblies like the Model Y Giga castings, and it has a structural battery pack, what they call CIB or cell in body design, where it reduces costs and parts, but it makes repair and disassembly difficult. The interior is very nice, clean design that they call Circle of Life. Even with Tesla's aggressive price cuts, the XPeng G6 comes in at a lower price. All XPeng EVs offer XPILOT, which sounds like Tesla Autopilot. That's kind of what it is. Current vehicles offer versions 2.5, 3.0, and 3.5, depending on the model. It is not fully autonomous. There are no fully autonomous vehicles available for sale anywhere. XPeng does have a fully autonomous robotaxi in development, and it's in limited testing, like many other companies. Whereas Tesla is determined to get to autonomous driving using only camera inputs, XPILOT 3.5 uses multiple sensors. I mentioned the two forward-looking LiDAR sensors in newer models. It also uses multiple exterior cameras, radar sensors, ultrasonic sensors to detect objects around the vehicles. There's also an interior camera to monitor the driver to make sure they're paying attention and can take over if the situation requires. That's where we're at with driver assistance systems. You cannot crawl into the back seat and take a nap. Navigation Guided Pilot, NGP, is like Tesla's full self-driving, or FSD. In the XPeng, it utilizes high-definition digital map of the road network that is captured in advance and streamed to the vehicle, so it knows all the curves and lanes of the road. It also makes for some slick rendering on the nav display, but this does limit what roads you can use it on, since not every road in China has been mapped in HD and other markets are to be determined. XPeng has their roadmap of new features coming in the future with XPILOT 4.0 and 5.0, each one inching closer to a fully autonomous vehicle. But the way they talk about their future systems suggests that hardware upgrades may be required, so it's not likely to be backward compatible to the vehicles currently on the road. Like Tesla and NIO, XPeng has its own network of charging stations. I mentioned them earlier, 480 kilowatt stations that deliver 670 plus amps, all very impressive specs on paper. They are building a network along routes between major cities in China, and they now have over 800 DC supercharging stations operating. In China, everybody uses the same EV charging connector. The GBT, there's an AC and a faster DC version of the plug, so buying an EV from a company with a large charging network is a convenience, a perk that is included, but it's not an absolute necessity. In summary of XPeng's lineup, they have very good technology. They look good. I know that's subjective, but I think they do. And they have affordable models with a single motor and rear-wheel drive. So everything sounds fine. Let's take a look at how they're doing from an operations and financial standpoint. Originally, XPeng relied on a contract manufacturing agreement with Haima Automobiles in China. It ended that agreement in December 2021. XPeng now has two plants of their own. A new third manufacturing location will be in Wuhan. Yeah, that Wuhan. In China, national incentives on new energy vehicles expired at the end of the year. So in January, sales of NEVs tanked. Big manufacturers like Tesla and BYD cut their prices, which forced others to react. Those cuts and the addition of some regional incentives on NEVs helped sales to recover in the following months. In addition to China, XPeng has been on sale in a handful of European countries since August of 2021. XPeng lists Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and the Netherlands as markets they sell in. XPeng plans to have new stores opening in Europe to build more of a physical presence and convince buyers that in the mature European market, they are there to stay. XPeng's best quarter for deliveries was Q4 of 2021, when it was still relying on their contract manufacturing partner. Since then, deliveries have been down, with Q1 2023 deliveries less than half their best quarter. In April, XPeng delivered just over 7,000 vehicles, and in May, they topped 7,500. That's better than their Q1 rate and on target for their guidance, but still short of their previous highs of nearly 15,000 per month. As a result, their stock tumbled again. Leadership says they will get back to that delivery rate in Q3 of this year. This despite XPeng lowering prices in response to the competition. The overall NEV market has recovered, albeit at the expense of OEM revenue, but not everyone has rebounded equally. I really don't have a solid answer for their disappointing sales. Is this something that is a supply problem or a demand problem that people don't like their vehicles? Leadership isn't saying, they just keep promising that better sales numbers are ahead. So let's take a look at some other indicators to see if this is a problem we should be worried about or just some bumps in the road. Their first plant of their own is in Zhaoqing. That's how I'm going to pronounce it. Reports are that they have increased production capacity to about 200,000 units. Their Guangzhou plant currently has a capacity of 100,000 vehicles, so they currently have a capacity of nearly 300,000 EVs, and in 2022 they delivered over 120,000. For a startup, that's not bad utilization of their capacity. You want to be better than 75% utilization to have profitable operations. They're adding a third plant in Wuhan that I mentioned. That'll add another 100,000 units, and that plant plus Guangzhou can have their capacity increased further to bring the total capacity to 600,000 a year. Could their disappointing deliveries be more of a demand problem? That would be worse than production constraints. They're kind of in the middle, not a huge volume EV manufacturer like BYD or Tesla, not quite as high tech as NIO with their battery swapping, maybe in the fierce Chinese EV price war. XPeng is just getting lost in the barrage. I've got a fun idea. Let's debate communism versus capitalism. Yeah, no, I'm not touching that, but I am going to talk about history because I love history. Back in 1908 in the United States, there were over 250 auto manufacturers. That number eventually, over decades, whittled down to what we now know as the Detroit Three. In China, the situation is different. It's still very early on in their auto industry, but they're not letting car companies fail. Many of the companies, especially some of the smaller regional ones, are state-owned. The states aren't going to let them fail. So you may have a situation where startups like XPeng and NIO can't really grow inside the country because there are just so many competitors. They're going to have to look outside of China if they really want to establish themselves as a major EV manufacturer. Financially, they're losing money. If you're into cars and not stock, that may surprise you, but as a startup, it's totally understandable, especially with the price war in China eating into their revenue and necessity of expenditures into new products, new technologies, new plants, and expansion into new markets. What I look at is their cash and cash equivalents. They could start to pare back on costs to preserve cash and make that last longer. I'm not super worried about them right now going bankrupt, but I am worried about them selling more EVs. A recent quote from Deutsche Bank made headlines saying that XPeng is in their last stand. That may be a bit of an exaggeration, but to say it another way, the time is now for XPeng to turn things around. The G6 is the most popular vehicle segment with their latest SEPA 2.0 platform, priced less than the Tesla Model Y. It must sell well. So in summary of XPeng, On the positive side, their newer vehicles and newer platforms are very competitive when it comes to specs and pricing. Their growth plans are somewhat conservative, so they're not growing too fast, and they have enough cash on hand to continue operations for a few quarters. That's important. Now, on the negative side, their sales are the big concern. They really need to step up and start hitting their targets in Q3 of 2023. And they also need to talk more about how they're going to expand outside of China. It would be important for leadership to start talking up how they're going to expand in Europe or maybe some other markets. I said earlier in this video that either they need to sell more vehicles or you need to sell their stock if you're a holder. It could be that XPeng is just getting squeezed out with all the competitors in the China EV market. You look at companies like BYD, they make their own batteries and they're huge. NIO is technologically advanced and has battery swapping. That's a unique feature. And Tesla, well, they have Elon Musk. What else do you need? Those are my thoughts on XPeng. Feel free to share yours below. And if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Thank you for watching.